There's a road in my town no one drives down after dark. It cuts through a dense stretch of woods, completely unlit, with only the occasional faded street sign or abandoned building breaking up the thick trees on either side. People say weird things happen there. Missing people, strange figures standing in the road, cars stalling for no reason. I never put much stock in those stories. I was the kind of guy who needed to see something with my own eyes to believe it. So I never thought twice about using the road as a shortcut when I needed to get home late at night. It was just a road. Nothing special. Until last summer. I had just gotten off work at the auto shop where I spent my weekends. It was late, almost 2 a.m., because my boss asked me to stay after closing to help with an unexpected job. I was exhausted and ready to crash in my bed, so I took the back road home, not wanting to deal with the long stretch of the main highway. The second I turned onto the road, I felt off. It was completely silent. No crickets, no distant hum of the highway, nothing. Just the sound of my tires crunching over the worn asphalt. I turned up my music, trying to ignore the gnawing unease creeping into my stomach. A few minutes into the drive, my headlights flickered. I furrowed my brow. That was weird. My car wasn't old or anything, but I kept driving. Then, out of nowhere, the engine sputtered. The car jerked once, twice, and then the headlights shut off completely. I cursed, gripping the wheel as I coasted to a stop. The engine was still running, but all my lights were out. I tried flicking the switch back and forth, but nothing happened. That's when I saw the figure. At first I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. It was just standing there on the side of the road, maybe 50 feet ahead, barely visible under the dim glow of the moon. It looked like a man. But something about him was wrong. His posture was rigid, unnatural, and his arms hung at his sides like dead weight. He wasn't moving. He was just staring. I swallowed hard, my fingers tightening around the wheel. "Just some drunk," I muttered under my breath. I tried the headlights again, and this time, they flickered back on. The man was gone. I sucked in a sharp breath, my pulse hammering. I could have sworn, no, I didn't have time for this. I needed to get home. I put my foot on the gas and kept driving, trying to shake the nerves crawling up my spine. A few more minutes passed. Then I saw something in the distance. Another figure, standing in the middle of the road. I hit the brakes hard, my car skidding slightly on the pavement. My headlights shone directly on him, illuminating every detail. It was the same man. He hadn't moved a muscle. His face was completely blank, his skin pale and stretched too tightly over his skull. I blinked, and suddenly, he was closer. I slammed the car into reverse on instinct, my heart leaping into my throat. My headlights flickered again, plunging the road into darkness. I fumbled for my phone, hands shaking as I tried to turn on the flashlight. When the light finally clicked on, my breath caught in my throat. The man was standing outside my driver's side window. I barely had time to react before my engine cut out completely. The music on my radio distorted, warping into this awful garbled static that made my skin crawl. I didn't dare turn my head. I could feel him, standing there, watching me. My breathing was too loud, my heartbeat too fast. My fingers were frozen on my phone. Then, a tap. A single, light tap against the glass. I lost it. I grabbed the door handle, ready to bolt, anything to get out of that car. But before I could move, something grabbed my wrist. Not a hand, something ice cold and bony, with long, unnatural fingers. I screamed, jerking away, and in an instant, the headlights flashed back on. The road was empty. The car rumbled back to life as if nothing had happened. The radio snapped back to normal. I sat there, my whole body shaking, staring at the empty road ahead. Then, slowly, I turned my head toward the window. A single smeared handprint was pressed against the glass. I didn't waste another second. I floored it. I didn't look back, didn't check the mirrors, didn't stop until I reached the safety of my driveway. When I finally climbed out of the car, my knees nearly buckled. I stood there for a long time, staring at my own reflection in the side window, at the faint outline of the handprint still lingering against the glass. I wiped it away with my sleeve, but even as it disappeared, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I didn't sleep that night, and I never took that road again. A few months later, I overheard some old-timers at the diner talking about it. They called it the Devil's Mile, said no one in town used to drive it after sundown. I asked why. The story they told me made my stomach drop. Over a decade ago, a man went missing out there. A hitchhiker, they said. He was last seen walking that stretch of road, but no one ever found him. His family put up missing posters. The police searched for weeks, but it was like he had just vanished. Then, a year later, people started seeing him, standing on the side of the road. At first, they thought it was some lost traveler. But then, they noticed something strange. The man was always wearing the same clothes, standing in the exact same spot, and no one ever saw him leave. Some people swore they saw him in their mirrors after they passed. Others said their engines stalled when they got too close. The worst part? Every single one of them claimed the same thing. He never had eyes, just dark, hollow sockets staring back at them. I left the diner that night feeling sick to my stomach. I still don't know what I saw on that road, but I do know one thing. Whatever it wasn't human. I never should have gone back to that lake. It was the summer before my senior year of college, and my friends and I wanted to do something big, something memorable before we all went our separate ways. So when my friend Matt suggested renting a lake house for the weekend, we all jumped at the idea. The place was perfect, secluded, quiet, and right on the water. A little too quiet, actually, but we didn't care. We were just there to have fun. There were 6 of us: Matt, Jake, Sarah, Emily, Jason, and me. We got there late on a Friday night, unpacked, and immediately cracked open some drinks. The air was thick and humid, the kind of summer night that sticks to your skin. The house was old but well kept, with a big wooden dock leading out onto the lake. The water was so still it looked like glass, reflecting the moonlight in a way that was almost hypnotic. It wasn't long before we got the idea to go swimming. Emily and Sarah stayed behind, claiming it was too cold, but the rest of us jumped in. The water was shockingly warm, almost unnaturally so. We splashed around, laughing, daring each other to swim out further. That's when we saw the boat. It was just a small rowboat, barely visible in the darkness, floating about 50 yards from the dock. No lights, no movement, just there. Jake was the first to notice it. "Hey, whose boat is that?" he asked, treading water. None of us had an answer. It hadn't been there when we arrived, and the lake was supposed to be private. Our rental was the only house for miles. Matt, always the reckless one, decided to swim toward it. "Dude, what if someone's in there?" I called after him. He just laughed. "Then I guess I'll make a new friend." He made it halfway before stopping. We could barely see his silhouette in the water, but I swear I saw his posture change. "Matt," Sarah called from the dock. "Shut up for a sec," he said. The air felt thick with silence. Then, barely audible over the sound of water lapping against the shore, we all heard it. A whisper. It was coming from the boat. I couldn't make out the words, but the sound of it sent a chill down my spine. Then the boat moved. Not a normal, casual drift like you'd expect from something floating in still water. It rocked violently, like someone or something had just shifted inside of it. Matt turned and swam back to us so fast he nearly trampled Jake in the process. "Get out," he panted, hauling himself onto the dock. "Get out of the water now." I didn't ask questions. I just swam as fast as I could. We stood there dripping on the dock, staring at the boat. It was completely still again, empty. At least it looked that way. We didn't go back in the water that night, but that was just the beginning. We tried to shake it off as just a weird experience, but there was this lingering tension in the air, like we had disturbed something we shouldn't have. That feeling only got worse as the night went on. The power cut out around midnight. We were in the middle of a drinking game when it happened. One second, we were laughing, the next, we were plunged into total darkness. "Fuse must have blown," Jason muttered, grabbing his phone. I reached for mine too, but it was dead. Actually, all of our phones were dead. I could feel the panic rising in my chest. The temperature had dropped noticeably since we came inside. The air was heavy and still, and for the first time that night, I realized something. The crickets had stopped chirping. No wind, no sound, nothing. Matt grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer and started toward the basement where the breaker box was. "I'll come with you," I said, not wanting him to go alone. We made our way downstairs, the wooden steps creaking beneath our feet. The basement smelled damp and stale, like something had been rotting down there for years. The second Matt opened the breaker box, I knew something was wrong. The switches were fine. The power wasn't off because of a blown fuse. Something had cut it. And then we heard the footsteps. Above us, slow, deliberate. Someone was inside the house. Matt and I exchanged a look. He slowly switched off the flashlight, plunging us into darkness. The footsteps grew louder, moving toward the basement door. And then, silence. We held our breath, listening. Then the basement door creaked open. A soft voice drifted down the stairs. "Why did you come back?" I felt my stomach drop. The voice was wrong. It was layered, like multiple voices speaking at once, barely above a whisper. Then came the scratching, slow, deliberate, against the walls. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Then Matt grabbed my arm and yanked me toward the far end of the basement, where a small, dust-covered window led outside. "Help me open it," he whispered, his voice shaking. We pried it open, and without hesitation, Matt pushed himself through, landing in the damp grass outside. I followed, scraping my back against the frame in my hurry to get out. The second we hit the ground, we ran. We didn't stop until we reached the front yard, where the others were waiting. "The boat," Emily whispered, her face pale. "It's gone." I turned and looked toward the lake. She was right. The boat, the same one we had seen earlier, was gone. The lake was still, dark, undisturbed. And then, deep in the woods past the shoreline, a flicker of movement. A figure, standing just at the tree line, watching us. We didn't stay the night. We piled into Matt's truck and drove, not stopping until we were miles away. The next morning, Matt called the rental owner to report the break-in. The owner was quiet for a long time before finally sighing. "You shouldn't have gone back," he said. Matt frowned. "What do you mean?" The owner hesitated, then said, "A few years ago, a group of kids like you rented that place. They found a boat floating on the lake and took it for a ride." I swallowed hard. "They never came back," the owner continued. "Search teams found the boat washed up on shore miles away, but no sign of the kids. The only thing they ever found was a message, scratched into the dock." I already knew what he was going to say. "Why did you come back?" We hung up without another word. None of us have spoken about that weekend since. I don't know what happened on that lake. I don't know who or what was in that boat. But I do know one thing. I'm never setting foot near that water again.